So we're going to get started here. I want to welcome everybody to our second CIAM series webinar, how to elevate security and the customer experience by adopting passwordless CIAM. So again, this is the second episode of our customer identity and access management webinar series. The first episode was enhancing the digital user experience and strengthening security measures, in which we really just dove into everything from planning to implementation to post-production, and all the fun around it when setting up solutions within the CIAM model. If you would like a copy of that, we have both recording as well as materials from the first one. And what I'm going to do is put in the chat 2 email addresses that you can send to get a copy of that. The first one is todd.rawson@techdemocracy.com, and the second is solutions@techdemocracy.com. Coming back to this, so our second in the series, again, how to elevate security and customer experience by adopting passwordless CIAM. Repeating it as we're getting more folks joining here. So welcome again. Passwordless authentication represents a true transformative shift in protecting and accessing digital platforms. The traditional passwords that everybody is used to always has been and is increasingly vulnerable to cyber threats such as phishing, credential stuffing, brute force attacks, and really just is not a good security model, as we're all finding out and have known for a long time. So adopting passwordless authentication methods will allow organizations and can allow your organization to significantly enhance not just your security posture, but also a smoother and more efficient user experience. On that note, I'm going to hand it over to Todd Sumter. We'll see him as Anthony Todd Sumter, but he goes by Todd Sumter from TechDemocracy. He's going to give the initial introduction, and we're going to go from there. So Todd, if you want to introduce yourself and your Talus cohort as well, as we are together, both Talus and TechDemocracy for this, please take it away.
Hey, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Todd. And yeah, my name is Todd Sumter. I am the Director of Cloud Services at TechDemocracy. And we also have Amar Fahim. Actually, Amar, would you mind introducing yourself really quickly?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Amar Fahim. I look after product marketing for the consumer side of our CIAM business here at Talus, based out of Austin, Texas. Again, thank you for having me, and looking forward to sharing some insights with all of you.
Thank you, Amar. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So really quickly, yeah, so Todd Sumter, I've been working with identity and access management for about 10 years now. And we've been doing a lot of stuff with CIAM lately. And so now today we're going to talk about, how to elevate security and the customer experience by adopting passwordless. Passwordless authentication, right? It eliminates the need for traditional passwords by using advanced methods like biometric verification, hardware tokens, mobile authenticator apps, and others, right? These solutions, they work by leveraging unique identifiers that are much harder to compromise than compared to passwords. Passwords, we all know, they're terrible. It's something that right? And something could be shared, whether through means that you're doing yourself or that a hacker or somebody that shouldn't have it all of a sudden gets your passwords or your PIN or anything, right? So, passwords are becoming outdated, right? They are the things that deal with the knowledge factors, right? The knowledge factors are, your passwords, OTPs, security questions, right? Your PINs. They're very easy to implement, getting those set up, right? But they can be forgotten, they can be stolen, and it costs money, right, to be able to reset them or to come back and get the not allowing bad actors to get a hold of the information that is being protected by that password, right? Passwordless deals with some of the other pieces, right? You have a possession factors and you have the inherence factors. The possession factors, those are your mobile device, right? The things you have. So these are, the key fobs, mobile devices, smart cards, hardware tokens, right? These are very hard to steal remotely. If you leave it laying around, then that's kind of on you, but most of these things are locked anyway, right? But then if you have a possession, if you lose your phone, that might be a problem, right? Where you would have, you have to go through and you have to go get a hold of, the help desk to help them reset it. But these types of things, they keep the account more secure that way. Some of the other pieces that work, let's say, with a mobile device, right? You have your inherence factors. Inherence factors are like your biometrics, right? So your fingerprints, retinal recognition, voice recognition, face recognition, right? Even handwritten signatures. Number one, you can't forget those, right? You can't lose those because there's something that you actually are. But then sometimes some of the devices that you may have may not be able to use all of those, and getting those set up could be a something harder to do for folks that don't have this in their wheelhouse to be able to handle. So going on with some of the stuff with the inherent things you are, right? So things you are with, you have, with biometrics, it's your physical traits, right? Like we said, facial fingerprint recognition. Other forms, we have, like I said, retinal scans, voice prints. Even there are other ones even that have brainwave and heart signatures. Some of these are less used. A lot of these are gaining more and more prominence to be able to secure accounts, right? And then the other piece would be security keys, right? You have your security keys like your fobs, your Yuba keys, Google Titan keys, etc. And then some of the other ones would be like your hardware tokens, which would be like an RSA token, CAC cards, other type of identity based that have been vetted that then are attached to your account to be able to authenticate without the use of a password. Okay. One of the things, like how some of these things would end up working, right? So instead, when you go to log into an application, right? Within the application itself, you would, identify your user account, right? Your username. But then instead of asking for a password, it would go ahead and send either a push notification or ask you to input the like your PIN from an RSA token, or go ahead and do facial recognition on an app, right? So kind of like a Microsoft Authenticator or something to that effect, right? So some of the use cases that we looked at, right, that we've talked and we've dealt with, number one would be like they're a large tech company, right? They're wanting to improve productivity, reduce IT support costs, right? This company had over 15,000 employees. This adds to a productivity loss of when resetting passwords, dealing with um, the loss of data and stuff like that. Some of these things, the average cost of calling the help desk and having somebody reset your password, dealing with your lockout and stuff like that, is between $30 and $70 per time that this has been dealt with. And over the year, this is very, very, very costly, right? But going to MFA or passwordless based logins, right? You have the boost in speed of sign-in speed. It simplifies it. There's less things to remember. You just have to remember your username, right? And with that, they've done a lot of studies based upon this. And it also, with the reduction in login friction, it actually helps the customers and gives them a better feeling when then and experience of using your application, right? Another one, right, with a retail company, right? They want to secure access to gift cards. Very simple, but so to access the gift card, the company requires that you create an account, of course, right? And then with the email address and password. But then once you first log in from a new device, they get your information and they have you set up a pin, or not a pin, but some sort of password. It's like like I said, an application that does biometrics, or like a Google Authenticator or something to that effect. Or the other one would be if they wanted to use a one-time password or a magic link that it gets emailed to you, because you do most of the time have control of your email account, and these are other ways you could do it, right? And the other ones would be, like I said, you would be able to register a fingerprint or other, a face or anything else that you wanted to do. The third one would be a medical insurance company, right? And they wanted to allow an adjuster to access it could be sensitive information within a customer's account, right? And because of this, they wanted to have more security. With this, they would be able to send, they'd be, maybe this adjuster is on the phone with the customer at the time, right? And the adjuster could send a push notification to the customer to say, hey, this person wishes to go ahead and access your account. Do you give them permission? And then it comes up and they can do the facial recognition, fingerprint, etc., right? And then if that wasn't available, maybe you can have a fallback method of, let's say, like a YubiKey or some sort of hardware token, right? And this will allow them to unlock the account, and they can go in and be able to go through the customer's account, all right? So benefits, right? We're going to talk about. So security enhancements. Passwords are subject to a variety of password-based attacks, right? Including, phishing, credential theft, stuffing, all of these, right? Even the most rudimentary forms of attacks like brute force remain highly effective, because people continue to use the same passwords for multiple accounts, right? And then these accounts get breached. There's a breach that happens. They get sent, and then folks are trading them, selling them, or whatever else. And then they just keep using these passwords to put them into their brute force attackers to try to get access to the accounts, right? By eliminating the password, you eliminate all of these threats. And because login credentials are never transmitted over the internet, there's no threat of interception here, right? With the user experience, most people have dozens, if not hundreds, of accounts that require passwords. If these passwords are appropriately complex, unique, having the random numbers, characters, a good length, etc., right? A lot of people are going to forget these. Forgotten passwords lead to, the password having to be reset, costs money, you get an account lockout. Both of these are very, very frustrating, and time consuming to correct for customers. And some of the people would rather leave a website or an application rather than have to endure having such a frustrating experience. With Passwordless, right? Customers and employees can log in easily and conveniently with an email link, an app, or any method that they have already set up, right? And then it makes it much easier, a lot less friction, right? Then you have the cost reduction, right? Passwords are not just insecure, they're expensive. It's estimated that a third of the help desk calls are related to passwords and password resets, and sometimes the estimates are even higher. And what they found is that, the top complaint is that they have so many passwords that they have to keep track of, and they just, and then they have to replace their password, to be able to do it right. You're going to be, resetting your password, changing it every 3 months or so, or sooner if you're, more security conscious. And what they're going to do is they're going to end up forgetting them. They're going to store them in their browser, which is another attack factor that can happen now, right? And it's getting more and more, it's getting easier for bad actors to go in and deal with and find these passwords, be able to use them and try to get back and get access to these different accounts, right? The last piece, right, is we have compliance, right? Organizations are under intense pressure to implement security measures that protect personal data in with compliance and data protection regulations. Let's just say in the EU, you have GDPR, the California Consumer Protection Act, many others. Passwordless authentication can help in a few ways. First, it significantly reduces the risk of password-related security incidents, such as phishing, unauthorized access, which can expose sensitive data. And also, because passwordless no longer collects and stores passwords, it reduces the amount of personal data and organizations hold about their customers. The use of passwordless allows organizations to demonstrate to governing bodies that they are taking actions to protect data and consumer privacy. Some of the challenges that we're going to have, right? First off, integrating with your existing systems, right? We know you guys have there's some legacy systems that may be out there. You may have some systems that you just don't have a great handle on. These are places that people like TechDemocracy can come in and help out with this type of stuff, right? You need to make sure that you plan carefully, and ensure that you have the right technical experience and expertise to be able to handle some of this. Because if you don't do it right, then people are going to have a lot of friction where people are not going to want to be using your systems, right? Then you have user adoption, right? Educating and training your users, being able to tell them, hey, how to simply set up a biometric factor, right? How to set up your email from sending a magic link or whatever else. It's important to address these and overcome the resistance to change through clear communication and support of your users. You also have the initial cost, right? Investing in new technology and devices, if they're if you're using like a hardware token, those can get costly depending on the amount of users you have, right? But the long-term benefits of this outweigh these costs because you're going to have fewer help desk calls, you'll have more productivity, the more customers coming in and using your application, be able to do that, right? Then you also have privacy concerns. Looking at storing, you're storing the biometric data storage, right? Users may raise this, but the thing is that your biometric information is not stored at the application level. It is stored at your device level, right? And with that, it ensures the data protection and the user trust. That's very, very, very important to us, and making sure that that type of stuff does not get out there. Like I said, their biometric data is not stored. It's in some big data warehouse somewhere, and so making sure that they understand that is something that will alleviate their concerns. So summarize really quickly, right? Organizations have tried for years to make the use of passwords more secure. They require complex combinations of letters, numbers, and symbols, and impose expiration dates even. But these efforts create usability problems, right? And add to the help desk calls and account lockouts. These passwords remain vulnerable because anything that's known, right, can be shared inappropriately or stolen. Despite the efforts of us, the leading cause of breaches continue to be unauthorized use of digital credentials, also known as passwords. Passwordless authentication eliminates this. It really eliminates all the risk of all things associated with passwords. Instead of relying on a user's memory, passwordless authentication, users with something that they have, like a phone, or something that they are, which is like a fingerprint. These methods are not only more secure, but they are more convenient to use, so your customers have no trouble accessing their accounts, and your employees can quickly, and customers can quickly get to work, use your application, and be secure. Passwordless also offers key bottom line benefits by reducing help desk calls related to passwords, eliminating the need to manage and secure passwords, and preventing costly usability issues that drive customers to go elsewhere. It's time to eliminate passwords once and for all, and it's easier than you guys think. All right, that's it for me. Lamar, let me get my stuff turned off here.
Thank you, Todd.
Yeah.
Great introduction. I'm going to start sharing my screen and ask you guys to confirm if you guys can see it or when you can see it.
We can see it.
Are you seeing like the big screen or the?
I'm seeing Passwordless 360, a new approach.
Awesome. All right. Well, again, thank you very much for having me, you guys. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Passwordless 360, Passwordless in general. Passwordless 360 being a new approach introduced by Thales earlier this year to take a holistic look at how organizations can implement passwordless across different user constituencies and take a more comprehensive approach. So starting off, drivers for passwordless authentication. I know Todd has spoken about this in a bit of detail. Essentially, the way we see it, it's driven by three major areas, right? So you're looking either for more security, eliminate phishing, credential stuffing, and other password-related attacks. You're looking for a better user experience and lowering operation costs. Fun fact, I think as part of our Passwordless 360 activities, we had a joint webinar with an analyst, Captain Nicole, and they kind of had these findings where when asked organizations and decision makers on what was their number one driver to implement passwordless, more than 55% said user experience. Right. So while you have other things, it is I think widely understood and appreciated by the industry that passwordless just offers a much better user experience. I think it's not a question of if, but when and how passwords are going to go away and how passwordless is the future. So I'm just going to take a little bit of a look at some numbers just to quantify these drivers, right? So first up, we saw security, 176 billion estimated phishing emails sent out in 2023. Again, this is just an estimate, but Security Magazine. Close to 300,000 phishing attacks in the USA alone during 2023. And in the this is an FBI Internet Crime Report. And then in the 2024 Thales Data Threat Report, 36% of our respondents responded or said phishing was the fastest growing cyber threat they were looking at, right? The third driver we talked about was customer experience. So earlier this year, we ran a major survey spanning 12 countries, close to 13,000 respondents. We called it the Digital Trust Index. And part of the questions was, a set of questions around passwordless or around passwords. 72% of our respondents, and this is worldwide across, starting from Canada, North America, we went all the way down to Australia, Africa, Latin America, Europe, Middle East, pretty solid coverage in the survey. 72% of our end consumers surveyed expected brands to offer a passwordless experience. So it's a customer expectation already. 64% cited password resets as the primary reason for losing their patients online in a digital interaction. And Some of the factors that led end consumers to abandon or switch to another brand, 20% said creating long and complex passwords. Yes, as organizations, we've been trying to secure access by complicating password creation requirements, but that has led to frustration and a bad, poor customer experience. And 16% said, you know what, we're just going to sign up with somebody else if we have to reset a password, right? So these are, let's say, intangible costs of sorts when it comes to user experience. Now, quantifying this in terms of operations costs, some of the research that we've done is, I know Todd mentioned between $30 and $70. What we saw at Talis was about $70, the average cost of a password reset on our side. 52% of Americans reset a password once a month. So that's a significant amount of effort spent on resetting passwords. And the average estimated company cost or an organizational cost for setting or resetting passwords coming down to about $5.2 million. So it's not just something that will make you lose your patience online. It is also costing businesses and wasting a good amount of hours trying to help customers with their passwords. So now we've kind of set the stage and we agree passwordless is the way to go and passwords are going to die. Let's have a look at some of the challenges in implementing passwordless, right? So number one, I think the question that organizations need to answer to themselves is, who is it for? Is it for our workforce? Is it for our consumers? Is it for our third parties, for example, right? And more often than not, you've got siloed organizational structures or tools that, one part of the business is looking at workforce IAM, consumer IAM is either homegrown or there's a separate set of people and a separate, kind of platform looking at consumer identity and access management. Step one, are the implementation teams or tech teams talking to each other in terms of, defining an overarching passwordless strategy. The next is implementing passwordless, right? So what level of assurance is required? What are you looking for? So you've got we've got an example here. Typically, you would classify your use cases around zero factor, single factor, or multi-factor authentication, again, depending on what level of assurance is required, right? So if you look at zero factor, this could typically be your factory worker where a machine powers up or lights up based on a factory worker walking up to the machine. There could be additional signals associated to it, a mobile device in their pocket or some kind of, NFC communicating card, etc., that basically gives access to the machine when somebody walks up. So that's your zero factor scenario. Then you have single factor, right? So, your typical retail outlet manager, for example, to access a cash register, a PIN code, or, a password could be enough. But then you've got more advanced, higher assurance level use cases. You look at corporate employees, business partners, consumers, financial services, or other regulated, industry use case scenarios. You could have a combination of multiple factors of authentication, right? So your username plus Face ID, or username plus a application-based authenticator, or some form of identifier plus a hardware key, a hardware authenticator, et cetera, right? So determining first up what level of assurance you're looking for is important, and then defining based on the assurance levels that you come up with. Defining access policies that eventually become the brains behind implementing passwordless, right? That orchestrate the different authentication journeys based on, the kind of user constituency you're addressing. Why, though, then organizations struggle to implement passwordless, right? I guess a simple answer to that is there's just, in a modern digital interaction, there's just too many user constituencies to address, each having different assurance requirements. There are several different authentication journeys that exist even within each type of user constituency. I've got an example to share in just a little bit. but you've got, as examples of different user constituencies, you've got your employees, and then within employees, you've got permanent employees, temporary employees, you've got gig workers, you've got contractors, and other third parties that you want to give access to. You've got corporate customers, and then you've got your end consumers, right? And then again, based on the kind of services they're accessing, you need to make this call whether, this has to be a higher assurance use case or a low assurance use case, right? Moving on. So what is, passwordless 360? I mean, the way we look at it is a complete um, transformative approach to implementing passwordless, right? So you can start with what we call, let's say, a basic implementation, typically focused on a single user constituency with a singular focus, right? Examples of a basic implementation could just be your corporate workforce users. Your focus or objective for implementing this could be to enhance security or reduce fraud. The method of passwordless implementation here could be FIDO-based USB tokens, and the end result being high security, but poor UX. Again, but this is internal, this is targeted towards your workforce. Maybe you can get away with it. Then you've got a more advanced implementation of passwordless. So this either focuses on multiple user constituencies or focuses on multiple drivers, for example, enhancing user experience and security, or security and costs. A typical example, again, taking the same corporate workforce users, the focus could be to enhance security, but also this time to improve employees' user experience. And the method could go beyond FIDO-based USB tokens and include smartphone-based authentication. And that results in better security and a better user experience for this user group. But poor user experience and open, vulnerabilities for your consumers or third parties. And what we call truly transformational is a focus on passwordless across all kinds of user constituencies with a dedicated focus on user experience, security, as well as cost efficiencies, right? So users in this case, in an example scenario, would be all of your workforce, all of your third parties and partners, and all of your end consumers, with the focus being enhancing security, improving customer experience, and also, kind of improving your bottom line, so to speak, in terms of operational efficiency. Methods to use could go beyond FIDO USB tokens and smartphones, and in this case could also add smart cards or, pattern-based authentication, resulting in a much better user experience, much better security, and a much better cost output when managing your costs. I hope you guys are with me so far. Moving on, we've got this, an example digital journey over here of a customer buying car insurance. So Bob is about to buy a new car. He spent several days doing his research, buying the right car, all excited about the new vehicle he's about to have. The only thing that stands between him and his new car is, let's say, getting the right kind of car insurance. He's looking to find the quickest way to find the right product, the right insurance product for his car. And then, sorry about the overcomplicated, extremely busy slide, but I'll try to simplify this for you guys. So you got to look at, your systems. You've got your front-end systems and your back-end systems, looking at what the user is doing, how what their expectations are, what are they thinking, what are the questions in their mind, how are they feeling, what kind of touch points Bob would be interacting with, right? And then, you have your website channel where, that helps them identify the auto insurance section. He gets to review, compare different options, what kind of coverages he wants, gets an instant quote, and buys or discards the insurance options in front of him. But what goes on essentially is you've got a set of stakeholders behind the scenes. You've got internal and external in this case. You've got corporate marketing in this example, you've got auto product marketing, you've got your partner, the insurance partner or the agent in the middle. Again, you've got for generating the code, you've got marketing, pricing, the agent and the agent's pricing manager involved in all of this process. And what I want to highlight here is how the Thales One Welcome Identity platform facilitates this exercise, right? So finding auto insurance that section is covered by things like social login capabilities, identity brokerage capabilities. When they're reviewing or comparing the best options, you've got features like progressive profiling, consent and preference management, application integration coming in over here. Then when it comes to generating the quote, again, progressive profiling kicks in, application integration. And then when it's time to buy, you've got things like identity proofing, registration, consent and preference management, progressive profiling, kind of kicking in as different modules during the purchase flow, during the customer journey, right? So the intent of showing this slide was, again, this is just one scenario of somebody walking up to a car insurance to an insurance company looking for a quote for auto insurance. And essentially what you have to do as organizations is map out as many user journeys as possible that you can. And in the process, look for tools and platforms that can automate a lot of this for you, not just in terms of the user's authentication, but also in terms of initial signup, accessing the services, decision-making, onboarding, and then recurring authentication. Todd, if you ever feel like I am running behind on time, please keep me honest, but I'll keep going for now. So thinking about, your current and future state of passwordless, again, this is part of the planning process. You have your as is state today, where you have, let's say, assuming full coverage, limited coverage, or no coverage for passwordless. The green circles highlighting where you have full coverage towards in the as is state towards higher assurance use cases. Yellow shows kind of limited coverage and red shows no coverage. But how do you move forward in terms of your phase one would be state? Ideally, you would want all of your permanent employees having access to passwordless, your contractors, suppliers, partners, distributors having access to passwordless, and your corporate customers. I mean, again, this is an example. You on the drawing board, you guys could choose different steps to take. But again, what I'm trying to say is going full transformational passwordless is a process that you should, take step by step and plan it out, chalk it out in advance. And then your phase two would be could be, I've got some passwordless coverage now this time around for some lower assurance use cases, for some more low assurance use cases, let's say for consumers in the state as well, and achieve kind of, not just address the complete user journey in the process, including those working behind the scenes to facilitate the end user's journey, but also in terms of your passwordless strategy going from basic to advanced to transformational. Okay. How do we help? Passwordless 360 is the Thales approach to getting a full passwordless coverage. We're trying to break down silos and the way tools, platforms, and systems are implemented at organizations, right? So again, you've got in this circle, you've got at the top your high assurance use cases. To the right, you've got external parties or external user constituencies. You've got at the bottom, you have some low assurance use case scenarios, and to the left is your internal identity and access management tools for permanent employees, temp employees, or gig workers, right? So what we're trying to show here is Thales offers on the internal side safe and trusted access for managing and defining policies for passwordless authentication for your internal use, for your workforce based on context and different risk signals. And then on the right side, you have the One Welcome Identity platform that is for managing policies for passwordless authentications for external user constituencies like your end customers, third parties, suppliers, contractors, etc. And to complete this, there's a number of tools or technologies that are available from Thales. So you've got a PKI plus FIDO USB token available as a hardware device. You've got a set of FIDO credentials coming from Thales. You've got a smartphone authenticator app that is available. You've got a FIDO USB token, OTP token, biometric authentication capabilities, plus things like ritual QR codes and SMS OTPs for your more basic lower assurance use cases, right? Going forward, there's this example of a passwordless authentication journey for consumers, right? So passkeys are all the rage. The adoption numbers are just phenomenal. If you guys have looked at some recent numbers coming from FIDO to replace passwords, right? So adoption is increasing quite rapidly. I think FIDO's last reported numbers were about 13 billion eligible passkeys at this point. So no questions asked, I think passkeys deliver a much better user experience and security than your traditional passwords, which is why a number of end customer focus entities like banks, for example, should consider upgrading their services to support multi-device, or what you see as synced passkeys here. And what passkeys do essentially is within a certain device ecosystem or an operating system ecosystem, they distribute keys across multiple devices. So let's say you generated your passkeys on your Apple iPhone, you should be able to access the same service on your iPad or your MacBook, right? Now, that does not really sit too well in more regulated environments like banks, for example, right? If in a banking scenario, this would make security professionals quite uncomfortable. Just the thought of having their keys being distributed across a cloud, a public cloud ecosystem, right? So a way to implement passkeys in that scenario is have device-bound passkeys. Now, device-bound passkeys offer a much better level of security as opposed to your sync passkeys. Slightly lower on the customer experience side, but gives you a much higher level of assurance in terms of security. So you could have two types of device-bound passkeys. One is obviously the hardware tokens coming from Thales or any other company for that matter. And then you've got, device-bound passkeys on mobile applications as well, right? So imagine a scenario where you're logging into a bank just to check your balance. The bank allows you to log in using synced passkeys, supreme user experience. But the moment you want to transact or send money from point A to point B or person A to person B, it says, no, I got to step up. I need to use a device-bound passkey. And then it kind of does one more step in between, making sure the transaction is being initiated from a device that was registered to perform this transaction. Okay. Again, talking more about Passwordless 360, multiple authentication journeys supported for workforce. On this slide, you can see here, there's a number of tools that are available. You've got access to example scenarios here. You could use a USB token or a smart card or a fingerprint card coming from Thales for systems like, your HR or internal ERP. You could use a mobile authenticator for, your general productivity tools, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you get the point. What I'm trying to convey here is there's, based on the kind of user journey that you're looking at, and again, going back to the planning part, you need to map out all possible user journey scenarios and then select the best kind of passwordless authentication methods to deploy for those. I think another amazing part of this is the policy manager piece that comes with Passwordless 360, right? So you can configure policies based on security and user experience needs using a pretty neat, intuitive dashboard. So starting from enabling, let's say in an example scenario, FIDO for a group of users, to defining the passwordless FIDO policy, enrolling users for FIDO devices online, and monitoring and adjusting this policy as you progress with your business. So again, this is really the brains behind implementing passwordless authentication, building configurable policies And, not just making it easy to access, but also the first step of enrollment. There's a wide range of MFA options to choose from coming from Talos. Again, a lot of tokens that can support all the way starting from things like compliance, physical access control, omnichannel, any device-based authentication to digital signatures, email file encryption, and strong authentication, right? So going beyond passwordless, there's a number of capabilities that Talos supports. So this is kind of a full bouquet of all capabilities offered by Talos across a user's digital journey, starting with identity verification, including capabilities like bringing your own identity, social logins, document verification, depending on the level of assurance required, liveness detection, and then in the login phase, you have authentication scenarios using digital identity wallets, mobile identity, single sign-on, strong customer authentication, passwordless. Usage, you've got authorization for adaptive access, fine-grained authentication, deletion when the customer asks for the right to forget or to leave your service. And underpinning all of this is, our built-in user journey and consent management identity apps that allow you to orchestrate different user journeys quite easily, let the customers or empower the customers with consent and preference management, and also include progressive profiling, just making sure you don't overload or overwhelm your customers. Backed further down by data security and risk management capabilities coming from Talos, all the way from risk management tools that identified elements on the device, intelligence elements on the device, behavioral biometrics, data discovery and classification, tokenization, et cetera, to complete kind of, everything offered by Talos in this space. I know we are approaching, I do want to leave some time for Q&A as well, but I just, beyond passwordless, there's, identity fair verification tools, biometrics for continuous authentication offered by Talos, and self-sovereign identity and zero knowledge proof solutions coming from us as well. I wanted to spend 1 minute on post-quantum considerations as well. I know this is a discussion that is getting more and more, let's say, traction in the industry. Again, just from preparing ourselves for the future, organizations need to start looking at, what kind of encryption technologies they're using today. Are they ready for a post-quantum world? Are the tools and platforms that they've implemented, are they aware of what kind of encryption algorithms those tools and applications are using today? Are they ready for a world where quantum computers are readily available to malicious actors, et cetera, et cetera? So again, just recapping, a full 360 approach to passwordless from Talos. That's it when it comes to the slide deck from my side. If there are any questions at all, happy to take them myself, Todd from TechDemocracy, at this point.
So looks like we got one. It should be, how should companies tackle challenges in heavily regulated industries when switching to passwordless authentication?
Oh, I guess I'll go back to what I was saying about, really looking at the drawing board and planning things out well, especially for regulated industries. You've got things like GDPR or PSD2, for example, mandating strong customer authentication in Europe, right? Just when you're defining your passwordless approach, make sure you've looked at those scenarios, like, again, taking SCA as an example, to make sure when you're implementing passwordless, you are indeed fulfilling the strong customer authentication mandate. You have at least a second factor of authentication just to comply with them. Again, goes back to strategy and planning, Todd. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, the PowerPoint will be shared after this. We will be able to send it out. There's an email address that's in the chat that you can reach out to them about getting these PowerPoints afterwards, or just email. Yeah, just email us and we'll be able to get it to you. Another question we got. As businesses move from traditional authentication to passwordless, what are the key best practices for a successful, seamless transition?
Good one. Yeah. I mean, again, in terms of best practices, I would go back to the initial few slides, where I was talking about really defining your goals, what you want to achieve with passwordless, and take it step by step, right? Start with a basic implementation. Step two, go to a more advanced one, and then full on transformational. And a key element for that is breaking down internal silos, making sure security teams, IT teams are talking to each other across different user constituencies, your workforce, your consumers, your third parties, or partners. And then again, mapping out those user journeys, right? I know in the case of some businesses, user journeys could be a few dozen to a few hundred, but that is absolutely essential to undertake as an exercise when you're implementing passwordless.
Let's say we just got another one in. What makes Passwordless 360 stand out from its competitors?
That's that's an interesting one. Bit of a salesy answer to that one, Todd. I think Passwordless 360 again. When we first came up with this concept, this was a few months ago when we launched the Passwordless 360 campaign. It stood out as unique to a number of analysts. We got some very good feedback, and I guess it's just also the ability of or Talus's standing as a company that addresses your complete, let's say, passwordless ecosystem across all kinds of user constituencies, and also all kinds of authentication tools and technologies to be available from one place. Right. So there's no questions asked. The highest level of assurance or highest level of security comes from hardware tokens or hardware-based, authenticators, right? So starting you as a company, do you offer hardware authenticator? Then if you look at some of the competition out there, they're either very good at the software part, or they're either a dedicated hardware company manufacturing hardware authenticators. So who's kind of sitting somewhere that can offer best of both worlds? Yeah, I think Talus hands down. And again, very proud that our research around Passwordless 360 is being cited by some of the leading analyst firms out there as well. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, do have another one. What components of Passwordless 360 are FedRAMP moderate to high compliant?
What components of Passwordless 360? I'm trying to making sure I have this right. Are FedRAMP moderate to high compliant? Well, again, that depends on the kind of implementation, the kind of use cases that you're looking at. If you want specifics, I think this question is coming from Polish. If you want specifics, I think somebody from TechDemocracy or Dallas can reach out to you and talk to you about this one.
Okay. Got another one. Well, here, so saying there's a statement, the marketplace can be slow to adopt modern authentication controls, SSO and MFA, right? Is it best practice to propose passwordless solution strategies after companies have fully implemented modern auth, or is it possible to propose passwordless during the modern auth journey? From my standpoint, I think that if they are wanting to modernize, depending on what, as Amar was showing with his little graph that he had with the circles, right, of where they're wanting to do it, it might be a some here, some there. We're going to do passwordless for all of the employees because we're tired of having Todd having to reset his password because he forgets it every week, right? Or whatever. But then it may be that for your higher um, compliant stuff, right? Like privileged accounts. You still may want to be able to not have full passwordless. You may need to have some other piece in there, or you could do it like in a step by a phased approach as well, right? But yes, going from if they have nothing, they're just passwordless and they don't have SSO or anything like that, and just going directly to password, it can be done. It just depends upon what their use cases are and what their what they feel that their approach needs to be, and then with the help of folks that may be helping them implement it, to go ahead and explain to them what their phases could be, or what they what the benefits or the stumbling blocks may be. Amar, I don't know if there's anything
No,
else you
I'm
want to add.
I'm 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 with you on this. Again, it's kind of a chicken and egg problem here, right? So again, if you are in the process of modernizing your authentication processes, yeah, I think the industry is at a point where passwords are recognized as the fundamental problem to a lot of problems. So yeah, if you're at it, maybe start with it now. Again, just depends on the kind of use case, like Todd said, right? So you could, based on the scenario, you could take a phased approach. If you're looking at it as a greenfield project or something new, I'd say, yeah, go passwordless from the get-go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Looks like we have time for maybe just one quick one to go. They'll be left. So how does passwordless authentication integrate with existing identity providers and legacy systems? Well, from my standpoint, you could actually go with, and just keeping it higher level. If you went with an identifier first, right? So where they just have just a username, and instead of having going to a password based system, you go into the passwordless flow after that. That's how it could integrate with a existing identity provider system, or with a Thales or whomever else it may be, right? And then with legacy systems, it just depends upon what your legacy systems are. If they need to have an agent based, if they're not, let's say, SAML or OAuth aware, right? You may have to set up some sort of an agent based um, uh, system, right? In an identity provider, right? That has an agent or an access management tool that has an agent-based system to be able to go and protect those other legacy systems that you may or may not have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so I think that's it. Are we and some Mr. Rawson's not here any longer. So we do thank you all for joining us today. Please feel free to reach out with any further questions that you may have. And we will also, if you also are looking for a copy of the slide decks that were presented today, and also a recording of this session will also be sent out to all registrants attendees as well.